The storm hit without warning. Captain Elias Kane gripped the controls of his small exploration craft, fighting to keep it steady as lightning split the sky above. The instruments blinked furiously, warning of system failures, but Elias refused to give in to panic. He had trained for dangerous missions, but nothing could have prepared him for this. The wind shrieked like a living thing, and rain lashed at the cockpit glass, blurring the view of the strange, uncharted planet below. He knew the landing would be rough. He just did not know how rough. With a violent jolt, the craft crashed through the thick canopy of towering alien trees. The hull groaned, then slammed against the rocky ground. Elias felt his stomach leap, and then a sudden emptiness as the world went black for a moment. When he opened his eyes, the storm had begun to lose its fury. He was alive, though battered, his suit torn in places and a deep bruise spreading across his shoulder. He struggled to move, his limbs stiff and aching. But the first thing he noticed was the silence. Not the comforting silence of peace, but the tense, watchful quiet of a place alive with things unseen. Around him, the forest glowed faintly with a soft blue light. The plants emitted a luminescence that pulsed gently, as if breathing in time with the planet itself. Strange flowers with translucent petals swayed, though there was no wind. Vines hung from towering trunks, some thick as a human arm, others thin and delicate like threads of silk. Everything was foreign, everything was beautiful, and everything, Elias sensed instinctively, could kill him if he made a single mistake. He stumbled from the wreckage, trying to assess the damage. The craft was destroyed, its engines blackened and smoking. The communications array was smashed. There would be no signal, no call for help. Elias was stranded, alone. As he explored the perimeter of the crash site, he noticed movement in the trees. Shadows flitted between trunks, watching him. His heart raced, but he kept calm. Years of training had taught him to assess before acting. Slowly, cautiously, he lifted his hand, showing he meant no harm. Whatever was out there, it was intelligent. He could feel it in the way the shadows paused, as if curious. Minutes passed like hours before a group of figures emerged from the forest. They were tall, their skin a deep shade of emerald, their features sharp yet elegant. They moved with grace, their eyes large and intelligent, taking in every detail of the human before them. Elias instinctively took a step back, but the creatures made no move to attack. Instead, one of them stepped forward, a woman with silver streaks in her hair and a calm, authoritative presence. She held a staff-like object tipped with a glowing crystal. Elias remembered his training in first contact protocols. He raised his hands slowly, keeping his tone calm and steady. "I come in peace," he said. His words were cautious but sincere. The alien woman studied him, her gaze penetrating. Then, in a soft, melodic voice, she spoke in a language he did not understand. Elias frowned, but stayed composed. She repeated the phrase, this time accompanied by gestures, pointing to him, then to herself, then to the forest. He began to understand. They were asking who he was. He pointed to himself. Elias Kane, explorer. Captain? Her eyes widened slightly, and she looked to the others. They spoke among themselves in rapid tones, their gestures intricate. It became clear to Elias that they were debating what to do with him. The silver-haired woman, who seemed to be their leader, nodded, and the group parted, leaving a path open for him to follow. Curiosity overcame fear. Elias stepped forward, following them through the glowing forest. He noticed the delicate way they handled plants, brushing past flowers without disturbing them. They approached a clearing where the ground opened into a natural plaza, surrounded by massive stone structures. The architecture was unlike anything he had ever seen, organic, flowing, as if grown rather than built, yet purposeful and stable. Here the tribe stopped. They gestured for Elias to sit on the ground. He did so, keeping his posture respectful. The silver-haired leader approached and placed a small object in front of him, a smooth stone carved with symbols. She pointed to the sky, then to him, then to the stone. He realized she was asking him to communicate, to offer something of himself in return. Thinking quickly, Elias used a stick to draw in the dirt. He sketched his craft, the crash, and his journey. The aliens leaned closer, examining each line with fascination. They did not speak, but responded with gestures and expressions, clearly impressed by his knowledge and resourcefulness. The leader touched the symbols he had drawn, then pointed to the horizon. Elias understood. They wanted him to show his skills, to demonstrate what a human could do. For hours, Elias worked. He gathered plants, showing how to purify water using heat and filtration. He used broken pieces of his craft to fashion tools, teaching them to carry heavy loads more efficiently. The tribe watched closely, mimicking his movements, asking questions through gestures, pointing and nodding. Elias felt a strange warmth in his chest. This was not just survival. This was connection. As night fell, the forest glowed brighter, illuminating the clearing in soft blues and greens. Elias had prepared a small fire using his survival kit. The tribe huddled nearby, not afraid, but curious. They seemed fascinated by the concept of fire, watching the flames dance and shimmer. Elias smiled, offering warmth and comfort. Slowly, one of the younger tribe members stepped forward, touching the fire with caution, then looking back at him with awe. Then the leader approached once more. She gestured for him to stand and follow. Elias obeyed. Curiosity piqued. They walked to a raised platform of polished stone in the center of the clearing. The tribe gathered around, forming a circle. Elias felt a strange tension, as if he had stepped into a ritual, older than memory. The leader handed him a cloak, woven from shimmering fibers of unknown origin. Its colors shifted in the dim light, reflecting the forest glow. She gestured for him to wear it. Elias hesitated, then draped it over his shoulders. Immediately, the tribe began a low, melodic chant. Elias did not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. They were honoring him. They were recognizing him for his ingenuity, his courage, and the respect he had shown their world. Elias felt a mixture of pride and humility. He had survived the crash, yes, but he had also proven that humans were capable of more than brute strength. Intelligence, adaptability, and kindness were weapons just as powerful. The tribe's eyes shone with admiration, and he realized that he had earned something rare, a place of honor in a world not his own. As the night deepened, Elias sat upon the platform, watching the tribe perform their ritual. The forest seemed to pulse around him, alive with energy and curiosity. He knew the challenges were far from over. The island was still dangerous. Unknown creatures lurked in the shadows, and his path back to his own civilization remained uncertain. But for the first time since the crash, he felt a sense of belonging. He was not just a survivor. He was a visitor who had earned respect, and perhaps a role that could shape the future of this extraordinary tribe. Before sleep took him, Elias gazed at the glowing horizon. He wondered what the days ahead would bring. Would the tribe accept more of his ideas? Would they teach him secrets of their world? And what of the dangers that might lurk beyond the forest? These questions filled his mind, but there was no fear, only determination. The humans, he reminded himself, had always faced the impossible and thrived. Here, on this alien island, he would do the same. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the alien scent of flowers and fresh rain. The tribe's chants softened as the night deepened, and Elias finally allowed himself to rest. Tomorrow he would rise and continue to prove that even alone, a human could inspire, adapt, and survive. For now, though, he sat on the platform, honored as something he had never expected to be, a king in a world that had once seemed completely alien. The morning light broke gently over the island, turning the bioluminescent forest into a tapestry of soft green and gold. Elias Kane woke on the ceremonial platform, the shimmering cloak still resting on his shoulders. Around him, the Amalthea tribe stirred, moving gracefully through their routines. Some tended to the glowing plants, while others prepared woven baskets of food from the forest. Elias rose carefully, his body still sore from the crash and the storm, but his mind brimming with curiosity. The tribe's leader approached him, her movements deliberate and calm. She carried a small, intricate device that glimmered in the morning light. It seemed almost like a tool, but also a symbol. She placed it in front of him and gestured for him to study it. Elias examined it carefully. It was a form of map, a three-dimensional model of the island. The leader pointed to various sections, and then to him. She wanted him to explore. Elias nodded. Though the island was beautiful, it was also unknown. He would need to understand its resources and dangers. With the leader's guidance, he stepped carefully through the forest, noting the unusual plants, some of which seemed almost semi-sentient, adjusting slightly to his movements. The forest floor was soft and alive, cushioned with moss and strange fungi. As he walked, Elias noticed how the tribe moved, silent, coordinated, careful. Every gesture, every step was intentional. He realized that this matriarchal society was highly organized, but also flexible. They adapted to their environment in ways that humans often ignored. He made mental notes, thinking about how their methods could help him survive and contribute. They reached a clearing where the tribe had built small dwellings. Unlike human buildings, these structures seemed to grow from the ground itself, shaped from reinforced vines and large leaves, hardened through natural processes. Elias marveled at the ingenuity. There was no waste, no destruction. Everything had a purpose, and yet it was beautiful. The leader gestured for him to demonstrate something. Elias thought quickly. He remembered the broken parts of his craft, the scattered tools, and his survival kit. He set to work using simple physics. He crafted a small water filtration system using crushed stones, layers of plant fibers, and gravity. Water from a nearby stream filtered through his improvised contraption, and clean liquid collected in a container below. The tribe watched silently. When the water came out clear, their faces lit up with delight. They cheered, clapping in their own melodic way. One of the younger members stepped forward, copying Elias's motions carefully. He realized the Amalthea valued not just results, but understanding. They wanted to learn, to improve, and to apply knowledge creatively. For days, Elias worked alongside them. He taught simple methods for building stronger shelters, gathering food efficiently, and even rudimentary mechanical principles. In return, the tribe shared their knowledge of medicinal plants, edible fungi, and methods of observing and predicting weather. Elias learned that their connection to the island was profound. They could sense subtle changes in plant behavior, water flow, and even the movement of unseen creatures. He realized he was part of a society that understood balance in a way humans often ignored. One morning, as he was collecting water with a young apprentice named Lyra, a distant sound reached him. It was faint at first, a rhythmic pounding that seemed almost like a warning drum. Elias froze. Lyra noticed his tension and tugged his sleeve, pointing toward the horizon. Across the water, another island rose from the mist, its shape jagged and unfamiliar. Moving along its shore were figures, watching. The Amalthea had taught Elias to read movement, and he knew immediately that these were not explorers. He returned to the village quickly, explaining what he had seen through gestures, pointing, and simple sketches. The tribe's leader listened carefully, her face calm but serious. She turned to Elias and made a clear motion. She wanted him to be involved in how they would respond. The Amalthea valued skill, yes, but also judgment and strategy. Elias felt a surge of pride. Even stranded here, he was trusted. Over the next day, they prepared the village. Elias helped them design subtle defenses, barriers of woven vines and camouflaged pits, meant to slow and confuse rather than harm. He taught them to work in teams, observing patterns and anticipating movement. It was a delicate balance. The Amalthea did not desire conflict, but they were prepared to protect their home. During the preparations, Elias continued learning. The tribe explained how they used the glowing plants not only for light but for communication. By arranging them in patterns, they could signal across distances, even through dense forest. Elias experimented with the idea, creating small light messages that flickered in sequence. The tribe responded with excitement, impressed by the human adaptation of their methods. That night, the rival tribe approached closer. Their movements were cautious, testing the limits of the waterway and forest. Elias observed them carefully and realized they were trying to intimidate, not attack outright. He explained through gestures and sketches a plan to demonstrate skill instead of engaging in violence. The leader agreed. She gestured for the rival tribe to be invited to the island for a challenge, a test of intelligence and problem-solving rather than brute force. Elias suggested a method. They would see which group could tame a rapidly growing plant that had recently appeared near the village. The plant was beautiful, with glowing petals, but it grew unpredictably and threatened to overtake the area if not managed carefully. The next morning, representatives from the rival tribe arrived. Elias stood beside the Amalthea leader, presenting a solution using simple tools and techniques, combining human logic with the tribe's natural methods. He demonstrated how to channel the plant's growth, using supportive structures and guidance rather than cutting or harming it. The rival tribe attempted to replicate the process, but they struggled. Their methods were forceful, trying to dominate the plant rather than cooperate with it. The Amalthea watched with quiet satisfaction as Elias guided the plant carefully, adjusting supports and providing subtle nudges. Slowly, the plant stabilized, its growth controlled, its beauty intact. The rival tribe's representatives stepped back, impressed and slightly embarrassed. The challenge was clear. Elias had not only protected the village, but had also demonstrated human ingenuity in a way that demanded respect. The Amalthea began a soft chant of celebration, their melodic voices filling the forest. Elias felt a warmth in his chest he had not felt in years. Here, on this alien world, he was making a difference. Over the following days, the rival tribe retreated, but the island remained a place of learning and exploration. Elias continued his work with the Amalthea, teaching and learning in equal measure. The young members of the tribe began to adopt his problem-solving style, asking questions and experimenting in ways that delighted him. He realized that his presence was changing the tribe as much as the tribe was changing him. One afternoon, Elias explored the far edge of the island with Lyra. They discovered a grove of plants that seemed to respond directly to touch. Some opened their petals, releasing scents that altered perception, while others shifted their stems to guide movement along safe paths.
Elias marveled at the intelligence in these plants.
It was as if the entire island was alive in a conscious, subtle way. He spent hours observing and sketching, noting patterns and behaviors. Lyra copied his methods, learning to observe closely, analyze carefully, and respond thoughtfully. Elias realized that human strength, the ability to question, analyze, and adapt, was a perfect complement to the Amalthea's harmony with nature. Together they formed a partnership that was more powerful than either could achieve alone. At night, the tribe gathered once more on the ceremonial platform. The leader approached Elias, placing a small glowing orb in his hands. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. She gestured to him, then to the tribe, then to the orb. Elias understood. They were honoring him again, not just for survival, but for his contribution, his willingness to teach, and his ability to solve problems that even they could not. This recognition was different from anything he had ever experienced on Earth. Here he was not a commander, a soldier, or an outsider. He was a collaborator, a thinker, a human being whose intelligence and adaptability were valued. As he watched the tribe perform their ritual, Elias considered the future. The rival tribe might return, and the island held dangers he had yet to discover. But for the first time since the crash, he felt confident. He was not just surviving, he was contributing, learning, and growing alongside beings who respected him. The night deepened, and the glowing forest around them shimmered softly. Elias held the orb carefully, feeling the gentle pulse of energy. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, and new opportunities to prove the strength of humanity. But tonight, he allowed himself a moment of calm. He was stranded on an alien world, yet he had found a place where his mind, his creativity, and his courage were honored. For the first time, he felt that even in a place far from home, humans could inspire and thrive. And with that thought, Elias Kane rested, ready to face whatever the alien world might send next. The island awoke with a soft glow as dawn crept over the horizon. Elias Kane stood at the edge of the clearing, studying the unusual plants that had begun to spread faster than usual. Something was changing. Even the Amalthea noticed it. The older members whispered among themselves, glancing at the glowing foliage with concern. Elias felt a familiar thrill. Challenges were always opportunities. This time, the challenge was bigger than anything he had faced since arriving on the island. The silver-haired leader approached him silently. She gestured to the rapidly growing plants, and then pointed toward the village. Elias followed her gaze. The growth was encroaching on dwellings and pathways. If left unchecked, the forest would reclaim the space completely, disrupting the delicate balance the Amalthea had maintained for generations. Elias knelt beside one of the creeping plants. Its stems pulsed faintly and the leaves seemed almost aware of his presence. He gently touched it, noting the way it moved in response. This was not a normal plant. It had intelligence, or at least a reactive awareness. Elias's mind raced. He could not destroy it, for the tribe revered all life here. He had to find a way to contain and guide it without harm. He began his work immediately. Using sticks and broken pieces of his craft, he created small frameworks to support the plant's growth, training it along intended paths. Lyra and a group of young tribe members followed his example, helping with careful precision. Elias explained, using gestures and simple sketches, how the plant could be guided rather than forced. They worked together, blending human logic with the tribe's understanding of nature. By midday, the rival tribe appeared on the far shore, watching from a distance. Elias had predicted this. They had retreated before, but curiosity and pride had brought them back. This time, their approach was cautious, almost tactical. Elias studied their movements. They were assessing, learning, and perhaps waiting for a chance to intervene. The Amalthea gathered around Elias, looking to him for guidance. He suggested a peaceful demonstration rather than confrontation. "Show them what we can do," he said, pointing to the plant. "Without violence." The leader nodded, approving. Elias felt a surge of confidence. Humans might be strangers here, but they had something valuable. Creative thinking combined with calm determination. He turned to the rival tribe's representatives, signaling that they were invited to attempt their own solution. They hesitated, but curiosity won. Small boats approached the edge of the island, their occupants watching closely. Elias stood beside the Amalthea leader, ready to guide without directly intervening. The rival tribe struggled immediately. Their attempts to force the plant into submission caused it to react unpredictably, twisting and extending in directions they did not expect. Elias recognized the pattern. The plant thrived on collaboration, not dominance. He used this insight to make subtle adjustments, guiding the plant gently toward stability. Lyra copied him instinctively, and the younger Amalthea members moved with precision, reinforcing the structures he had created. Hours passed as the two groups worked. Elias noticed the rival tribe growing frustrated. They were skilled in their own ways, but their approach lacked flexibility. Elias smiled faintly. This was what humans excelled at, the ability to adapt, observe, and respond with creativity rather than force. Finally, the plant's growth stabilized under Elias's guidance. It glowed softly, its branches arranged in flowing patterns, covering the ground without overwhelming it. The Amalthea cheered, their melodic voices rising in celebration. Even the rival tribe looked on in awe. Elias realized that he had done more than control a plant. He had demonstrated the strength of reasoning, patience, and cooperation. The silver-haired leader stepped forward, placing a hand on Elias's shoulder. She gestured broadly to the controlled plant and then to the tribe. The message was clear. He had proven himself, not just as a survivor or visitor, but as a teacher and innovator. Elias felt a warmth in his chest. This recognition was different from anything he had known on Earth. Humans had always been admired for ingenuity, but here it was celebrated openly, without competition for power or resources. Evening fell, and the rival tribe retreated to their island once more. Elias and the Amalthea returned to the village, exhausted but triumphant. He sat on the ceremonial platform, reflecting on the day's events. The island was alive, its challenges unpredictable, but he was learning to navigate them. More importantly, he was earning the trust and admiration of the Amalthea. They respected humans not for brute strength, but for ingenuity, adaptability, and empathy. The night was calm, and Elias was not alone. Lyra joined him, carrying a small glowing fruit. She handed it to him, smiling. Elias accepted it, marveling at its delicate sweetness. He realized that this exchange, teaching and learning, sharing ideas, offering solutions, was more valuable than any treasure he could find. Over the next few days, Elias continued his work. He refined methods for guiding plant growth, creating small systems of irrigation using hollowed vines, and experimenting with light patterns to influence the behavior of certain plants. The tribe watched and learned eagerly, adopting some of his methods and improving them with their own understanding of the island. Together they became a team, blending human creativity with Amalthea wisdom. One afternoon, Elias noticed subtle changes in the forest. Certain plants began moving faster, their glow intensifying in response to the humans' and tribe's activity. He studied them carefully, realizing that the ecosystem was not static. It responded to attention, care, and strategy. The rival tribe might return, but with this knowledge, Elias felt ready to face any challenge peacefully and effectively. That evening, the tribe gathered for another ritual. Elias stood once more on the ceremonial platform, the glowing orb in his hands. The Amalthea chanted softly, and the young members repeated his gestures with precision, mimicking his movements and expressions. Elias felt a profound connection, not just to the tribe, but to the island itself. Every plant, every creature, every glowing light was part of a system he was learning to respect and understand. Suddenly, a faint tremor ran through the ground. Elias tensed, recognizing it as a natural signal. The island's ecosystem was shifting. The rival tribe could sense it too, he thought. This was the beginning of a new test, one that would require all of his skills: observation, reasoning, and calm action. The leader approached him, her expression calm but urgent. She gestured toward the forest, then to the glowing plants, then to the horizon. Elias understood. He would need to take the lead again, guiding the tribe to respond intelligently to the challenges ahead. This was not about control or dominance. It was about partnership, between human and alien, between skill and nature, between knowledge and instinct. He nodded. "We can do this together," he said, though his voice was quiet. The Amalthea responded with gentle nods, their trust evident. Lyra stepped forward, ready to assist. Elias realized that he was no longer a stranger here. He was a part of the society, valued not for power, but for intellect, insight, and cooperation. Night fell again, and Elias stood at the edge of the clearing, studying the glowing forest. The island pulsed with life, unpredictable but full of patterns waiting to be understood. He had faced the challenges before him with logic, patience and creativity, and he had earned the trust and admiration of beings entirely unlike himself. He thought of Earth, of humans who had struggled and thrived despite impossible odds. That same resilience, ingenuity, and adaptability were proving invaluable here. On this alien island, stranded far from home, Elias Kane realized something profound. Humans were capable of greatness, not through weapons or strength, but through thought, empathy, and perseverance. As he watched the glowing plants sway gently in the night wind, he felt a thrill of anticipation. The rival tribe might return, the island might present new dangers, and the forest might test him in ways he could not yet imagine. But he was ready. He had proven that human ingenuity could earn respect and admiration even in the most alien of worlds. And with that thought, Elias turned toward the village, ready to guide his friends through whatever came next. The night was alive, the forest glowing softly around him, and the human in him shone brighter than ever, resilient, clever, and honored as a true partner in a world both beautiful and dangerous. The first light of dawn spilled across the island, turning the glowing forest into a river of soft green and gold. Elias Kane woke on the ceremonial platform, the cloak from the tribe still draped over his shoulders. He rose slowly, stretching his sore muscles. The events of the past days had been exhausting but exhilarating. He had survived the crash, earned the trust of the Amalthea, guided the young members of the tribe, and even outsmarted the rival tribe with patience and creativity. Yet he knew this day would bring the greatest challenge yet. As he stepped into the clearing, the leader of the Amalthea approached. Her silver-streaked hair caught the light, making her look almost ethereal. She gestured urgently toward the forest, then to the glowing plants, and finally back to him. Elias understood at once. The rapid growth of the plants was accelerating again, faster and more unpredictable than before. The island itself was alive in a way he had never seen, responding not just to their presence, but to the balance of care and disruption. Elias studied the plants carefully. Their stems pulsed faintly, and the leaves shifted almost like eyes, watching him. The young members of the tribe gathered, looking to him for guidance. He realized that he would need to lead the tribe in a coordinated effort to stabilize the forest. This was not a simple task. Every action had to be measured, every decision precise. He began by assigning rules. Lyra and a few others would monitor the edges of the growing plants, ensuring that the growth stayed within safe boundaries. Others would reinforce structures made of vines and supports, guiding the plants' natural patterns without harming them. Elias moved quickly, explaining his plan through gestures, sketches, and demonstrations. The tribe followed his instructions with perfect synchronization. Hours passed as they worked tirelessly. Elias moved among them, adjusting supports, offering guidance, and observing subtle cues from the forest. He realized that the plants were not random. They responded to energy, attention, and intention. By maintaining calm focus, the group could direct the growth naturally. Elias smiled to himself. Humans were adaptable, capable of thinking creatively, and working under pressure. That skill, combined with the Amalthea's intimate knowledge of their world, made them a force to be reckoned with. Midday arrived, and the rival tribe appeared on the far shore again. Elias had anticipated this. They watched silently, curious and cautious. Elias knew they were evaluating his methods. Unlike before, they did not approach with aggression. They had learned, at least partially, that the human's intelligence and adaptability could not be challenged with force alone. Elias turned to the Amalthea leader and gestured toward the distant observers. She nodded. Together, they would show the rival tribe the power of careful planning, cooperation, and ingenuity. Elias assigned a small group of Amalthea to signal the observers using glowing plants, arranging them in patterns that demonstrated the stability and harmony they were creating. It was a message. Intelligence and patience could achieve what brute force could not. As the afternoon wore on, the work continued. The glowing plants responded beautifully to the team's efforts. Vines shifted along the supports, flowers opened in time with subtle patterns, and the glowing light moved in waves across the clearing. Elias felt a surge of pride. The island had become a living demonstration of human and Amalthea ingenuity working together. Then, a sudden tremor shook the ground. The rival tribe gasped and retreated slightly, uncertain. Elias moved quickly, analyzing the effect. A cluster of plants near the edge of the village had begun to grow erratically, bending toward the village structures. He acted immediately, guiding the young Amalthea to stabilize the growth. They worked as a team, applying what they had learned from him. Within moments, the plants were guided safely, their growth controlled without harm. The rival tribe watched in awe. They had expected chaos, perhaps conflict, but instead saw a human leading a harmonious solution that protected life rather than destroying it. Elias realized that this demonstration, human intellect applied with empathy, was the ultimate testament to the strength of his species. The Amalthea, watching him, smiled with pride and admiration. Evening arrived and the work was complete. The forest glowed softly, its beauty preserved, its growth balanced. Elias stood at the ceremonial platform, watching as the young Amalthea repeated his gestures, reinforcing the lessons he had taught. He realized something profound. Humans could thrive anywhere, not because of weapons or physical strength, but because of curiosity, creativity, and the ability to think, adapt, and cooperate. The rival tribe, satisfied with the demonstration, began to retreat. They had learned, though indirectly, the value of intelligence, patience, and collaboration. Elias allowed himself a quiet smile. Even in an alien world, humans could inspire respect and admiration. They could achieve greatness without dominance or destruction. That night, the Amalthea held a celebration. They danced in flowing patterns, their melodic voices rising and falling in harmony with the glowing forest. Elias stood among them, honored as a true partner and leader. The silver-haired leader placed a glowing crown on his head, a symbol not of power, but of wisdom, creativity, and respect. Elias felt a warmth unlike anything he had experienced before. He reflected on the journey. He had survived the crash, learned a new culture, solved impossible problems, and built trust with beings who had once been strangers. He had demonstrated that humans' greatest strengths were not in weapons or aggression, but in ingenuity, empathy, and perseverance. Here, on an alien world, he had proven what humanity could achieve. The next morning, a faint signal appeared on the horizon. His rescue team had found the general coordinates of the crash. Elias faced a decision. He could return to human civilization, sharing his story and discoveries, or remain on the island, continuing to learn and grow at the Amalthea. He weighed the possibilities. Carefully, he had a chance to bridge worlds, to be a living example of cooperation and understanding. He chose to stay. Humanity's legacy, he realized, was not just survival. It was inspiration, adaptability, and the ability to connect across differences. By remaining, he could strengthen the bond between humans and the Amalthea, ensuring that both species learned from each other. Over the following weeks, Elias and the tribe worked together to expand the village, incorporating his designs with their organic architecture. They developed new methods for guiding plant growth, harvesting resources sustainably, and communicating over long distances using glowing patterns. Elias taught, learned, and adapted. The island had become a laboratory of ingenuity, a place where human intellect met alien wisdom, producing results neither species could have achieved alone. One afternoon, Elias stood on a hill overlooking the village. The sun set in brilliant colors, reflecting off the glowing plants and illuminating the forest canopy. He saw the young Amalthea practicing the techniques he had taught, their movements confident and precise. Lyra waved at him, her face lit with a smile of understanding and pride. Elias felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He thought of Earth, of the people he had left behind. Perhaps they would never know the full story of this island, of the tribe, or of what humans could achieve. But that was not important. What mattered was the example set, the bridges built, and the legacy left behind. Here, on this alien world, humanity had proven itself not as conquerors, but as thinkers, collaborators, and innovators. The night settled over the island, and the forest pulsed softly with life. Elias walked among the glowing plants, feeling their subtle movements respond to his presence. He knew the challenges would continue. The rival tribe might return someday, new problems would arise, and the island itself could change unpredictably. But he was ready. Humans adapted. Humans solved problems. Humans inspired. And now, the Amalthea had seen it firsthand. As he returned to the ceremonial platform, Elias reflected on everything that had brought him here. The crash, the storm, the initial fear, and the long hours of work with the tribe. All of it had led to this moment. He was no longer just a visitor stranded on an alien island. He was a leader, a teacher, and a partner. The tribe had honored him as a king, and in doing so, had recognized the unique strengths of humanity. The silver-haired leader approached one last time. She gestured to the horizon, then to Elias, and finally to the village. Her message was clear. He had fulfilled his role, not by force, but by intelligence, courage, and collaboration. Elias nodded, understanding the depth of their respect. He looked around the village, at the glowing plants, the Amalthea moving gracefully through their work, and the calm, radiant forest beyond. A sense of peace settled over him. He had faced the unknown, adapted, and earned honor in a world utterly different from his own, and he knew that this was only the beginning. Elias Kane, stranded on an alien island, honored as a king, smiled quietly. Humanity had proven itself once again, not through weapons, not through domination, but through ingenuity, empathy, and courage. And here, in the glowing forest of the Amalthea, that legacy would continue, shining brightly for generations to come. The morning air was cool and filled with the soft scent of alien flora. Elias Kane woke to the gentle glow of the bioluminescent plants, which now pulsed faintly, even in daylight. He stretched, feeling the familiar ache of muscles that had worked hard over the last weeks. The island was alive in ways he was still learning to understand, and each day brought new challenges and surprises. He stepped down from the ceremonial platform, the shimmering cloak of honor resting loosely on his shoulders. The Amalthea were already active, moving with grace and purpose through the village. Lyra waved at him and hurried over, carrying a small tray of fruits and nuts harvested from the forest. Elias took the offering with a grateful smile. The tribe had taught him much, but he had also grown to care for them deeply. He no longer felt like a stranger here. He belonged. As they ate quietly, the leader approached. Her silver-streaked hair reflected the early sunlight. She gestured to the horizon, then toward the distant mountains that bordered the island. Elias followed her gaze. He noticed strange flickers of light along the peaks, patterns that were not natural. His mind raced. Could it be another tribe? Or perhaps something else entirely? The leader seemed to sense his thoughts. She placed a hand on his shoulder and gestured for him to follow. Elias understood. The island was testing them once more. He nodded, signaling Lyra to join, and the three moved toward the mountains. The trek was long, the terrain rough and uneven. Alien vines reached out, and small, luminescent creatures scurried along the ground. Elias guided the tribe members, showing them simple techniques to climb and navigate safely. He marveled at the way the Amalthea adapted, blending human problem-solving with their own knowledge of the land. Together they moved efficiently, each step deliberate and careful. When they reached the base of the mountains, they discovered a hidden valley. It was unlike anything Elias had seen before. The plants glowed brighter, their patterns intricate and almost hypnotic. Streams of water ran through crystalline channels, and the ground pulsed faintly underfoot. This was a place of intense energy, a region of the island that seemed alive in a more conscious way than anywhere else. Suddenly, a series of sounds echoed through the valley. Elias froze, listening. They were not animal calls. They were deliberate, almost rhythmic, like messages encoded in sound. The leader gestured for silence, and the Amalthea listened attentively. Elias felt a thrill of curiosity. This was not a threat, it was communication. Something, or someone, was trying to speak. Following the sounds, they discovered small clusters of glowing plants, arranged in complex formations. Elias knelt, studying the patterns. He realized they were signals, like a natural code. He pointed to the shapes and made gestures to indicate understanding. The leader nodded, clearly impressed. Elias's human ability to recognize patterns, interpret them, and adapt gave him an edge even in this unfamiliar environment. As they moved deeper into the valley, they found another surprise. Small creatures unlike any he had seen before emerged from the glowing plants. They were delicate, with translucent wings and luminescent bodies. They did not attack. Instead, they hovered, observing the humans and Amalthea with apparent curiosity. Elias remembered the lessons of the previous days. Patience and calmness were key. He held out a hand slowly, and one of the creatures approached, landing lightly on his finger. The tribe members gasped softly, but the leader smiled. This was a first contact of a different kind, not with another sentient species, but with a form of intelligent life that communicated through energy and light. Elias felt a surge of excitement. Humans had always excelled at observing, learning, and forming connections where others might see danger. He realized this moment was another example of that strength. The creatures led them further into the valley, moving in a deliberate path that Elias and the Amalthea followed. The patterns of glowing plants became more intricate, forming a map of sorts. At the center of the valley, they discovered a natural amphitheater made of crystalline structures. In its center was a single, massive plant, its glow pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat. Elias approached carefully, feeling the energy of the place resonate through him. The plant was immense, its stems weaving together like a living lattice, and its glow changing colors in complex sequences. He studied it, noting the patterns and timing. Using simple tools and materials from the Amalthea, he began experimenting, gently guiding its growth without disturbing its natural rhythm. Hours passed. The young Amalthea and Lyra assisted, copying his methods, learning from his approach. Slowly, the massive plant responded, stabilizing and forming a structure that harmonized with the energy of the valley. It was a living bridge between the natural world and intelligent design, a perfect example of cooperation between species and environment. As night fell, the rival tribe appeared again, cautiously observing from the edges of the valley. Elias knew they were curious, perhaps still unwilling to accept human ingenuity as a legitimate form of leadership. He turned to the Amalthea leader and gestured, signaling that they should demonstrate the power of cooperation rather than conflict. The rival tribe watched as Elias guided the massive plant, showing how gentle adjustments and careful observation could create harmony rather than chaos. The young Amalthea mirrored his movements, the glowing plants responding in rhythm to their actions. Slowly, the rival tribe began to understand. Their faces shifted from suspicion to amazement. Elias smiled faintly. Humans thrived not by dominance, but by intelligence, creativity, and patience. That lesson had been proven repeatedly, and it was clear now even to outsiders. The night deepened, and the valley pulsed softly with light. Elias stood in the center of the amphitheater, surrounded by the Amalthea and the glowing plants. He realized something profound. Humans could inspire, teach, and connect, even in the most alien environments. The rival tribe had witnessed a demonstration of ingenuity and empathy, and they would not forget it. Over the next few days, Elias and the Amalthea worked to expand the valley's structures. They created safe pathways, improved water flow, and experimented with patterns of light to enhance plant growth. The young members learned quickly, and Lyra proved to be an exceptional student, anticipating solutions and offering ideas that impressed Elias. One morning, As the sun rose over the valley, a small vessel appeared on the distant horizon, the human rescue team. Elias felt a mixture of emotions. He could return to Earth, sharing his story of the Amalthea, the rival tribe, and the living island. But he looked around at the tribe, at the valley, and at the glowing creatures that now trusted him. He knew his place was here. Humans had shown what they were capable of. Not destruction, not domination, but understanding, cooperation, and innovation. Elias approached the rescue team in his own time, explaining that he would stay. The team understood, documenting his decision, but respecting it. Elias returned to the tribe, greeted with warmth and celebration. The leader approached, placing a hand on his shoulder and gesturing toward the valley. The message was clear. He had become part of their world. He was a human who had earned trust, respect, and a legacy that would endure. The rival tribe, having observed the events and witnessed Elias's methods, approached with respect. They no longer saw him as an outsider or threat, but as a teacher and leader. Discussions began, not of conflict, but of shared knowledge and cooperation. Elias realized that human adaptability and intelligence could bridge worlds in ways that physical strength never could. Days turned into weeks. Elias helped the Amalthea develop sustainable systems for managing the island's unique ecosystem. He introduced small mechanical tools, inspired by human ingenuity, but adapted to the island's needs. The tribe flourished, integrating human problem-solving with their natural harmony. The island pulsed with life, glowing softly in a symphony of color, light, and energy. One evening, Elias stood once more on the ceremonial platform, the glowing crown of honor resting on his head. He gazed at the village, the valley, and the glowing plants that now thrived under the combined care of human and Amalthea. He realized that humans' greatest strength was not conquest, not power, but the ability to observe, understand, adapt, and teach. Here, on this alien world, that strength had created a legacy that would endure far longer than any human-made technology. Lyra approached him, holding a small glowing orb. Elias accepted it, feeling its gentle pulse in his hands. The orb was a symbol of trust, knowledge, and shared achievement. He smiled. Humanity had proven itself once again, not through force, but through intelligence, creativity, and empathy. And now, that legacy was alive on an alien world, glowing softly, ready to inspire generations to come. The night settled over the island, the glowing plants shimmered, the forest hummed with life, and the Amalthea moved gracefully through their work. Elias Kane, stranded human, honored king, and teacher, stood tall. He had faced the unknown, adapted, and earned his place. And he knew, with certainty, that humans could thrive, inspire, and endure in any world, no matter how alien, when intelligence and courage guided their path.